Call to order the Finance Committee for Tuesday, June 9th. The first order of business is Order FY 20058, which is year-end transfers. And I believe that correlates to the $441,000 transfer. Tony, can you just walk us through that real quickly?
Do we have to approve the minutes from last meeting?
Good call, Leah. I'll do that right after Tony walks us through this. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so this is an annual activity where we, part of our projections through the course of the year, we know where we may be short, we know where we may have some surplus, and we use this activity the town manager does in order to take action where he feels he needs to and spend appropriately, and then to offset that where we're going to have surpluses. This is also part of the Municipal Modernization Act that was enacted a number of years ago and has since been expanded so that cities and towns have the ability to manage through this activity to balance their books and ensure there's no illegal deficits that exist within certain budgetary groups. And the budgetary groups that the council and the finance committee approves annually is salaries, expenses, and then there may be some transfers, and there can also be debt service. And those are the budgetary groups by department. So what you have here in front of you is a list of the transfers by the budgetary group where there's a surplus and it being transferred to a group where there would have been a deficit if not for the transfer.
Yep.
Some of the items that are expended in those, the town manager is quite aware of. They're not unexpected. They're strategic and tactical decisions in order to advance the objectives of the council and the town manager. So there's a total of $443,000 coming out of various expense and salary and wages and benefits lines into various salaries, wages, and benefit lines and expenses. That's what you have before you. So the net appropriation is zero. Yet it's a transfer from available funds to be used within the general fund for other purposes. So it's just a moving of the budget around that was enacted back in May of last year. That kind of sets it up.
Appreciate that, Tony. I'm familiar with this. I just want to make sure that everybody else understands it. So does anybody have any questions for Tony on this?
This is Kathy. So I think we talked about a lot of these items at a prior meeting, but I don't think we talked about the treasurer, 128,000, which I think a big portion of that was professional services, it looks like, from one of the reports you gave us.
Yeah. There's a couple things. Yes, you probably would have saw it on the projection. So what we haven't filled yet is a payroll position. So we had to go to outside professional services to offset that cost. Then on top of it, we became more aggressive with some of our old tax title accounts. So if you add up the 33,000 roughly in tax title, and I think the math would be 65,000 in salaries, salaries into professional services, then that covers that. Well, no, that would only be 98,000. I take that back. Let me go up above and look at it. We're moving out of our expense line 62,000 in salaries, wages, and benefits, and we're moving down into our treasurer collector's expense line, 128. The difference is, in fact, tax title costs. So the number I gave you is inaccurate, but the purpose is the same. It was to move salaries down to expenses for a professional outsourcing of our payroll activity, plus the tax title attorney, the additional costs related to tax title collections.
So are we using that outside service for 2021?
We're in the process of trying to hire somebody.
Oh, okay.
We had interviews last week.
So that's why we didn't see any increase, like, I didn't notice anything in this year's budget sort of to account for that.
That's correct, because our intention is still to hire a full-time person.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill?
A question about the Norfolk Aggie School. Is that because we estimated, but there were no students, or the change in student count for that?
Yes, so what will happen with the agricultural schools, typically, we get a notification in March or April, and then come October, they'll get their final student population, or let's put it more directly. When they start school, they know who is actually going to be enrolled, and they will then finalize the number. So if the number of pupils is less than what they had estimated, then the assessment is less. And that's in fact what happened last year.
Okay. Any other questions for Tony on this transfer? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Please
Josh, that's Bill.
Motion.
That was Bill. Bill Wood. Do I have a second?
Leah Wyatt, second.
Great. I'll do the roll call vote now. Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Yes,
Julie. Julie's muted. I'm gonna unmute Julie. Julie,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Bill.
Yes.
Thank you.
The next piece of business.
I'll add my eye, Susie Robinson.
Oh, Josh, yep. Sorry, Susie.
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, Susie.
That's okay. Aye.
Okay. The next piece of business is to approve the meeting minutes from May 26, 2020. Did everybody get a chance to review those? Does anybody have any changes or questions about them? And if not, can I get a motion to approve?
Kathy, motion to approve.
Julie, second.
Okay, I'll do the roll call vote. Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Susie.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. The next order of business is FY 20-059, which is a year, FY 20 year-end transfer for Old Scottish Links Golf Course in the amount of $358,000. Tony, I'll let you walk us through this one, please.
Yeah, there's two components to the use of funds. The transfer station is, their costs are continuing to exceed their revenue. They did go up in March, February, I think it was, February, early March before the COVID. The rates have gone up. to adjust to the budget for FY21. But in fact, we have had to subsidize this budget annually as the costs have exceeded the revenue. So in essence, what we're doing is funding a revenue deficit. The costs we feel are going to be in line with what we budgeted. It's the revenue for FY20 that's not in line. So this is a transfer from available funds in the general fund that are currently there to the 108,000 for the transfer station. Old Scotland Links Golf Course, as you know, was closed mid-March. Didn't begin to open up until late May. We have, in fact, done our estimating and forecasting, and we feel that although we'll be able to recoup more revenue than we anticipated, the fact that they haven't been able to get the golf carts out there and get their normal May or June events that they hold, their outings, that's going to require us to subsidize this fund for this year. A portion of the deficit that we anticipate is going to be funded by CARES Act dollars because we have maintained the continuity of that operation. And in so doing, we maintain the employment of 4 full-time employees even when the course was closed. And we were required to really maintain the continuity of the asset and the efficacy of the asset by performing the required activities and maintenance tasks. And therefore, there's going to be some an additional deficit, but that deficit will be offset by the CARES money. We'll be submitting that this Friday, and we'll be receiving those CARES monies prior to the end of the fiscal year. So this makes up for the revenue deficit. CARES makes up for the expenses that we incurred that we can attribute to COVID. The 250 makes up the revenue deficit from not having a fully operational golf course, as I mentioned. The caveat is we can see by the second phase now of the governor's opening plan that driving ranges are going to be able to be open. So now we're going to be able to look at trying to generate some revenue for the remaining portion of the year. For that, we are investigating either leasing for the day golf carts so we can have our outings begin to kick in, because we may have to run 4 golf carts per foursome versus 2 golf carts per foursome. Or we are looking into plexiglass dividers between each rider in the golf cart as an alternative. We're getting pricing on that. So we're doing everything we can to get the golf course as fully operational as possible under COVID. But we want to ensure that this deficit is taken care of prior to the end of the fiscal year. If we didn't take care of it, there would be really the way the DOR would, let's see if I can say this politically correct. They would force us to follow an accounting practice that would really hit us for not only the 250, but also another 250 because of how they account for deficits and enterprise funds. So not only does it make sense to ensure that they are positive cash and positive fund balance to ensure the continuity of the operation, it makes sense from an accounting standpoint because we would have been hit when we went to do our free cash certification come September, early October, plus they would have required us to raise that deficit because it would have been considered a permanent deficit in the eyes of the DOR on the recap. So if they reduced our free cash by 250 and they required us to raise it on the recap from revenues from the general fund, you can see how $500,000 is what would hit us for the first year. That's how they operate. And therefore it makes much sense to make sure that the operation ends this fiscal year in the black. And that's why we're transferring 250,000 into the old Scotland Links Golf Course.
Bill?
Tony, you and I have had a long relationship on the numbers with the golf course. So if you'll allow me to ask a couple questions.
Sure.
So unlike prior years, this transfer, you're looking at this as just a simple transfer. You don't expect it to come back from the enterprise fund.
Correct.
Is that correct?
I wouldn't expect it to. No, I wouldn't. However, there is a slight possibility that it could.
Okay. Secondly, so I heard what you said about the outings. I don't know when the function room is going to be allowed to be opened, but are you seeing an uptick in the revenue for outings at this point, bookings, or is that still a possibility? And my concern goes beyond the end of the fiscal year for this transfer. My concern is, what does the rest of the summer look like, and are we going to be looking at these numbers again next year?
We're certainly trending in the positive. The play is up. The revenue isn't because of the outing revenue, the driving range revenue. Typically, we would start outings at the end of May, so there'd be at least 5 or 6 outings prior to the end of the fiscal year. But given everything that we're seeing from the governor and the use of the carts and some of the alternatives that we're coming up with to ensure we can get those outings happening come July. In essence, if we have 2 or 3 less outings, but we have those 4 or 5 missed outings in FY21, that actually should help us in our FY21 number, at least to start the first quarter. So I am optimistic because what I'm hearing in the golf industry, and I'm affiliated with 2 particular clubs outside of Old Scotland. Volume is up, memberships are up, and activity is up because it's one of the few things someone can do that's outdoors that allows them to have some sense of recreation and some sense of freedom other than walking and jogging. So I am optimistic based on the extent that I understand the industry and the extent of what we're seeing for numbers and what we're hearing from Charlie and Chris at the golf course.
Tony, I'm curious, and again, this is always for my background in education since I'm newer. How are we able to have that much room out of police and highway DPW?
Good question. That was asked last year, but you weren't here, so it's good that someone's paying attention. So one practice that we put in place, the town manager, myself, and the assistant town manager back when I came on board was, I believe that you should budget for positions and headcount, okay? Historically, there would be a negotiation on $1 and everything would just work around $1. It wasn't worked on FTEs. So what we find is this year and last year, particularly in the police department, is the attrition through retirement and then a replacement and the lag in when the need is established and actually filling the spot is delayed. And the chief would speak to this. It can be delayed 6 to 9 months. That transitory nature of the FTEs has been such that we have had a significant surplus last year and this year. There's another caveat. When we lose a very senior officer, lieutenant, or in this case, a captain, as we did in February or March. You know, you have 4 or 5 months worth of no salary you're paying out, and the moving of the individuals up to the various positions to fill them, and then to fill your officer, takes time, as I alluded to. But on top of that, their pay is different. So when you bring in a new officer, they're starting at a step 1 versus someone that's been an officer or patrolman that's been on the force for 25 years or 30 years, who's at a step 10. So with those 2 moving parts, and because of the retirements that have occurred, that's the type of surplus that we have. Now, one thing that we have enacted, the town manager has this year, and the assistant, when we met with the police chief about a month or so ago about this, he wanted to know whether or not he could start looking to fill those spots sooner, more in advance of the retirement that are forthcoming. But he wanted to make sure we had a budgetary commitment so that he could do that, because he'd like to have it so one's leaving and one comes on. But that in itself sometimes can put some strain on your budget. So we anticipate as best that he can, and the best that the town can help support the filling of those positions, that type of deficit will shrink. The other change in policy is around sick leave buyback and vacation buyback. One of the things we wanted to do for year-to-year comparisons is we wanted to make sure that we could, in fact, pull out those particular costs when they're incurred. For instance, a few weeks ago, the Finance Committee approved over $200,000 for one particular retirement. Historically, the town or the city would say to the police chief or fire chief, take that, find a way to get that out, pay for that out of your budget. So for me, it's been a way to monitor closely FTEs for budgeting, and these additional liabilities that you have incurred that are really separation buyout liabilities from the operation budget, so that we can compare FY20 to FY19 to FY18 and know we're comparing apples and oranges, and we can look at the FTEs that we had in FY 18, 19, 20, and 21. It's a very conservative budgetary approach, but we feel it gives us the most flexibility at this time of year to address other issues that may come up within the operating budget. Because short of that budget and our health insurance line, and in some respects our fire department, there's not a lot of wiggle room. So there is some excess capacity if you were budgeting by dollars versus budgeting by head count. But that's the choice we have made as a leadership team and a finance team. So that's why we've gotten to that type of surplus.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Tony on this transfer?
Kathy has her hand up.
Good. Kathy?
Sorry, I didn't mean to have my hand up. I think when I put it down, it doesn't always go down.
So you're all
All right.
I'm fine.
Do I have a motion to approve this transfer?
Make that motion, Bill.
Have a second?
Kathy, I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Susie.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, I see Dennis has joined. We have one last small piece of business before we start the joint meeting. And it is a gift, acceptance of a gift for Parks and Recreation's FY 20060 in the amount of, I believe it's $500. I can't find it. Now I can. In the amount of $500. Any discussion on this gift?
I think it's awesome. I wish more people would give $500 to the rec program.
That's right. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion, Julie.
Do I have a second?
Second, Bill.
Your roll call vote, Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Susie.
Aye.
Thank you.
Eric, I added one other item to our agenda, and maybe we have like a minute. So
Yep.
we had created the Budget and Finance Subcommittee because we didn't have a full complement of the Finance Committee, and we were having trouble getting a quorum. And we haven't had that in a long time, so I'm wondering if we should disband that subcommittee.
So I think it's a great question, and I see Michael on, and I kind of have a question directed to him. And it's more aligned to if we were to just keep it in place and we were to need it, then we would have it in place already. But I understand your question, Kathy. So Michael, maybe just real quickly, give us your thoughts on that one.
That's actually a good question. I think, obviously the Finance Committee has the ability to create, subcommittees, if you will. And certainly, I think when this was created, it was a good idea. I do think you have a really good group of people now, so you don't seem to run into the same problems that you were running into before. I guess, just my suggestion, I would keep the committee, keep it in place, so to speak. You don't have to use it or activate it, but and you don't even have to assign people to it. But if you keep the committee in place and we run into this issue again for some reason next budget cycle, then it's easily activated. So you can sort of vote to I think it's the chairman's call. Actually, you could just not activate the committee, but at least keep it in name so you can reactivate it later. That'd be my suggestion.
So that means that we wouldn't have members assigned to it.
Correct.
I like that idea.
Yeah, if we need it, Kathy, we can always just, ask for volunteers and get 3 or 4, 3 people on an alternate at that time. Okay.
So what do we have to do to do that? Do we have to just vote on that so that it's clear that we don't have any membership anymore in that?
You're welcome to vote. I don't know that that's necessary. I think Eric, as chair, can simply sort of gut the membership of the committee, and just sort of if that's reflected in the minutes, I think that's adequate.
Okay. Josh, if you could reflect that in the minutes, and then if and when we need it again, we will ask for volunteers and reassemble. So perfect. Appreciate it. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Eric,
Go ahead.
sorry, this is Mike Dolan. I know I normally attend these and don't speak during public comment, so that may be why you skipped it, but I do have a question for public comment.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michael. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. And I don't expect an answer tonight. I know public comment, we don't go back and forth to get answers, but if somebody could follow up with me and let me know the last time the golf course was solvent itself, and over the past, say, 10 years, how much every year has been given to the golf course to cover its deficit. So those are my 2 questions. And again, I don't obviously expect those answers right now or tonight.
Yeah, Michael, I'll take that. I will get with Tony offline, and I will certainly sync back with you.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Eric, could you copy all of us on that response so we have that information as well?
Yeah, I will figure out the right way to do it and/or add it to the next.
Oh, perfect. Yep.
The next agenda. Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you.
perfect. Thanks, Kathy. I agree with that too. Thanks.
All right, with that, Dennis, let's kick off
Yeah.
the joint committee.
So I'll call our meeting of the Budget and Finance joint meeting with the Finance Committee to order at 7:02. Tim is unmuted. Sean, where'd you go?
I'm here.
Okay, Sean, there you are. All right, so we have a couple things to do before we get into the budget. It shouldn't take too long. So the meeting's called to order at 7:02. We have approval of our minutes from May 26.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, Tim,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Dennis, yes, it's 3-0. Sean, Tim, then we have legislation referred. Do we want to continue to push back FY 19-057?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Tim,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Dennis, yes, 3-0 to move ahead. FY 20-058, FY 20 year-end transfers. I think we talked about this at our last meeting. Is there any motion to approve the fiscal 20 year-end transfers?
So moved.
Second.
Sean, Tim, any discussion? Any questions? Okay, all those in favor, Sean,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Dennis, yes, 3-0. Then we have fiscal 20-059 fiscal year-end transfer for the Old Scotland Link Golf Course.
Dennis, what I'd like to do, if it's in order, is to make a friendly amendment to this to add the transfer station in the end of year transfer, just for consistency. I know it doesn't change the order itself, but I'd like to reflect it in the title of the order, please.
Oh, okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve just to start us off, Sean, if that's okay.
Yeah, I've got some other things too, but I just thought that'd be the first thing I'd bring up.
Well, then you can second the motion, then you can make your amendment, I'll second it, and we'll vote on that.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a motion by Tim and second by Sean to approve the order. The discussion is, Sean, you want to amend the name of it to add the transfer station.
Correct.
So the Old Scotland Links Golf Course transfer station, year of end transfers.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Any questions on the amendment? Seeing none. Tim?
Yes.
Dennis, yes. Sean?
Yes.
Okay, now we're back under the main motion. Is there any other amendments you wanted to make to this, Sean?
No, I do have a question, but
question.
no other amendments.
Okay.
And this is to either to Tony or to Michael. So we're transferring $250,000 to the golf course. And I was on the earlier call, so thank you, Tony, for explaining that. My question is this: if in an upcoming fiscal year there is a surplus within the golf course, do those funds ever come back to the town?
Let Tony answer that, but short answer is yes.
Yeah, and it's yes, and we have 2 years to recoup the $250,000.
Okay. All right, that was my question. Thank you.
My understanding is that revenue in the golf course stays within the enterprise fund. So it doesn't come to the general operating revenue for the town. It stays within the enterprise account for the golf course.
So here's how things work mechanically. So as we go to do, let's say it's November time, and we see the revenue for the first 4 months, 25% up. We could then put in an order that would allow for a transfer for a sum of money from the golf course to the general fund to repay the subsidy that it was provided.
True, but when that golf course first opened, 97, 98, 99, 2000, it was running a very good, what you would say, profit.
Yes.
And the town only received what it asked for, and that was through the mitigation. I don't know what the term was in the budget, but it was like $90,000 or whatnot for indirect costs. There you go, indirect costs. But all that other revenue stayed within the enterprise account.
That's correct.
The only money,
Unless specified.
yeah, or the only money the town ever got is what it asked for or what it let them borrow has been recouped. So Sean, your answer is that it doesn't come back to the town. No profits come back to the town unless it's owed to us.
Correct.
Dennis, I hate to bring up ancient history.
Yeah.
But I was there when it happened, so I'll bring it up anyway.
All right.
The one of the selling points of the golf course was that, in fact, based on projections of rounds, et cetera, that in fact would fund the recreation department for the most part. And obviously that has never really come to fruition as it is. So I'd kind of disagree on saying it doesn't come back to the town. I'd agree with Tony saying that we can write an order to take whatever money we want, as we could from any other enterprise fund, I believe.
Let me be clear. Only for money that's owed due to a deficit that was funded through the general fund. So you're basically lending $250,000 to the enterprise fund, and as long as that's paid back within the next, as long as there's an order to request the payback for that over the next 2 years, then you can in fact recoup that $250,000. That's
okay, and that's fine, Tony, and that's good. But I just remember it being sold that it was going to fund recreation. As I said, ancient history.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So, Sean, does that answer your question?
It does. I do have one follow-up question, Tony. If it's not paid back in 2 years, what happens?
Then that's it. The Golf Course Enterprise Fund, legally under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, 53 and a half, it's lost to the general. The general fund's lost the rights to recoup those funds.
Oh, okay, so now Tony, let me ask the follow-up. Let me ask the next question. We write an order in November to recoup the $250,000, and we find out by the end of the fiscal year we can't do it. So now it's a new deficit that they owe us. Can that not be rolled forward forever if we need to?
I think that's a very creative way to roll the.
I'm being serious. I mean, if we're worried about getting it paid back, why can't we do that?
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that. Over the course of time, the town has time and time again stepped up to fund deficits at the golf course for various reasons. And I think for the most part, we've been kind of holding the bag in regards to trying to recoup all of the funds. So understanding the spirit of Tim's question, and I fully agree that we have an asset, but we have to look at multiple ways to be able to keep that asset whole, but also not to put the town in a potential financial issue if 2 years down the road we're not able to recoup that type of expense. And Tony, I understand too, there are a multitude of restrictions on enterprise funds through MGL. I'm not trying to discount that.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but I think in the past we've been a little laissez-faire with supplementing the golf course's budget, and I think now we have to get a little bit tighter in regards to maybe supplementing, but also make sure that we have avenues to get that money back.
So I will make my commitment is absolutely to follow the law and to make sure that the town is kept as whole as possible. And I will make sure I make that commitment to you now that that's what I will do. And if moving the buckets around a little bit allows us legally to do it and to buy us some additional time for the golf course to become more solvent, then I will do that. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second to approve FY 20-059 year-end transfers, Old Scotland Links Golf Course. and
Captain.
Station.
Come here. Come here.
You're not on mute.
All those in favor, Tim?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Dennis, yes, 3-0. Now we're going on FY 20-060, acceptance of a gift, Parks and Recreation. It's a $500 gift, I believe.
So moved.
Second, moved by Sean, seconded by Tim. Any discussion? All those in favor, Sean?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Dennis, yes, 3-0. Takes care of legislation referred. Now we're acting under FY 21 budget. I believe this is where our joint meeting will come in.
Dennis, are you taking comments from your meeting, the budget meeting? Or are we
Well,
just jumping into the,
It's kind of the last thing on our agenda.
okay,
We're not done with I guess we go into the budget and discuss the budget.
Yeah, I think
don't know if we
I
do
think
the
it would be the
budget
right.
this- Go ahead, Sean.
I think it's the right thing to do is to go through the budget and then allow public comment at the end.
okay, good.
Right, but we have discussions as D. So should we have our joint meeting now or have I mean, we all have the budgets. We've been given presentations on revenue. We've been given presentations on the expenses. We all have it. I know Mike and Tony are here. I don't know if there's any changes or any additions or any questions, any changes since I mean, I've read through it. I know the revenue. I know we don't know what the state's doing yet still. I believe that's still, they're still pondering what they're going to do up there. Our budget hasn't changed, right? What's been presented to us hasn't changed since May 26, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So this portion is joint meeting, so all of us on both committees can speak, right, on the subject?
Yeah, I guess, I think the easiest thing to do would to discuss the budget. We have the enterprise accounts. We have the
I just have a quick question.
Yeah, and then we have the annual budget. Okay, it's an open meeting now. Go ahead, Bill.
Just a quick question. So, we've got a 45-day limit here, and it's been, 10 days, maybe more, since the town manager submitted the budget. So we're living under a clock now. So I don't know when that timetable runs out, though. So I was looking for a date of when the budget has to be voted on with any changes, if there are changes.
The next council meeting is June 23rd, which we will have the budget hearing on June 23rd. And I believe that night we'll be in a position to approve the budget, provided the Finance Committee has made their recommendations and the Budget and Finance Committee has made their recommendations. So we can have discussions tonight. If we're comfortable, we can vote these orders tonight. Again, this is a period where the council has a 3-week break, so we don't meet on the 16th. So if we still have questions and we want to come back a week from tonight to continue discussions on these budget orders, we can do that. So there's time, Bill. So the council right now, the council hopes after the public hearing is to vote the budget June 23rd. Our next meeting after that is not until July 7th, which I still think will be within the 45 days, I believe.
It will.
Do we know if Rainham has a date to vote for the school? Because we have to vote first, right?
We don't have to vote first. I believe their town meeting is June 15th.
Oh.
So in essence, if they vote the budget June 15th, the council, I mean, if we vote and recommend all these budget orders tonight, then they will probably find out that we've approved the budget as is, as far as recommending it to the council. But with the council won't have an opportunity to vote the budget until June 23rd at the earliest.
Okay, so I have a question. So the request from the school committee was more than what is included in our budget. So by about 370,000. So is Rainham voting on what was requested from them? I guess my understanding was if we vote something less, then they're constrained by how much Bridgewater is including in their budget because they can't vote more than their percentage.
Right. My understanding is that our town manager has been working very closely with the town administrator in Rainham and the school administrators, and that I believe he can speak to this, is that the 2.9% increase that we have allotted to the school district is in agreement. And I don't think, from my understanding, is Rainham will put their share in equal amount or whatever their percentage is. I don't think they're gonna, my understanding based on what our town managers told us is that they're not gonna sit there and say, well, we can afford more, because my understanding is Rainham is in some tough budget crunches too. So I'll let the town manager speak to that. I think we're all, as far as I'm concerned, we're all on the same page. No one's trying to over anybody.
Dennis, can I give some background?
Sure.
Before Michael, thank you.
Yeah.
Each town does what each town does. And we've had plenty of times back when we had town meetings where we voted first or Rainham voted first or whatever, and ultimately it all ended up coming together. There were many times when I was on the school committee and I was harassing Mr. Gallagher about, when he was on the finance committee, about increasing funding to schools to get it to the town meeting. And, you know, I think whatever happens with one town's vote or the other, historically, there have been gifts from one town or another to the school department. I know that's not generally their policy these days to accept those, and it's not looked necessarily favorably upon. And I'm sure at some point, Mrs. Holbrook and Mr. Dolan can comment about that in public comments. But I don't think we as a town have to predicate ourselves on what Rainham as a town is doing. We need to, you know, in my mind, get the school as much as we can reasonably and possibly afford, and then let the chips fall where they may.
Right.
Okay,
Now,
I guess I misunderstood last year. I thought there was a lot of conversation about that as we were trying to get extra money for the schools. And I guess that is my other question is, you know, last year we were able to find that extra $120,000, which we took from capital and put it to the schools. And is there anything else that we can do? Because I think it's clear the schools are in a place that's between a rock and a hard place. They've already done layoff notices. We haven't done any on the town, and we're talking about not doing them, which is wonderful, but is there anything extra that we can do for the schools, I guess is my question.
well, I think that we've had this discussion, and certainly if we could, we would. Remember, Bridgewater is using $1.6 million of free cash or available one-time revenues, so we don't have to lay off anybody, and committing 2.9% increase to the school district. And remember, the biggest piece that's missing here is, what is the state going to do with Chapter 70 funds? Because at that point, you know, we may have to come back and have a discussion again if it's drastic, and we can try to help them along the way. I don't know what's going to happen with the state, but I don't think that what Bridgewater is proposing, and if Rainham can do the same, is going to decimate the school department notwithstanding not knowing what the state's going to do. So I'd like to refer to the town manager to see what he has to say about this. I believe there's been a lot of discussions between the two towns of what we have put forward.
Thank you, Dennis. I would agree with all of that, and I would only add that this is a really unique budget season and a unique budget. As I've said before, I think to both Budget and Finance Committee, we're looking at building a budget of numbers based on revenues that are tenuous at best. And we have had weekly conversations with the district. They understand, our constraints. Obviously, we clearly understand their constraints because of their reliance on Chapter 70 aid, just as they have no idea what their Chapter 78 is going to be, and 71, we have no idea what our local aid from the state will be either. So Tony's done a good job of trying to estimate based on very little data and very little information coming out of the State House. And I think the district is in exactly the same boat. Derek and Kathy have been trying to, literally read tea leaves and come up with a budget. So having said all that, this is a unique budget because we have made a commitment to the council and to the people in town that we will start the fiscal year with a budget. But we're very clear that we will be watching that budget weekly. And so when we have to make adjustments, if we have to make adjustments in mid-year or even at the beginning of the year, the first month of the year, we'll be back at the council looking to make those adjustments as we move forward. When we've negotiated collective bargaining agreements, we have overemphasized to the bargaining units that it's our goal and our objective and our responsibility to fund stabilization so that we have enough money set aside in our rainy day account to ensure that we can survive a downturn, an economic downturn. So as we've said, many times, this is like the economic downturn times 100. But we are in a position where we can fund the next fiscal year and abide by all of our collective bargaining agreements, but it's going to require the use of those rainy day funds. So that's the deal we made was we're not going to give you everything you want, but we're also, when times get bad, we're not going to turn to you with layoffs the first thing out of the gate. And I think that's been effective, and I think it's been very effective to date. So we will continue to make that commitment. So the question is sort of about the schools. So just as we don't know what our revenues are going to be, we know they don't know what their revenues are going to be. Their slice of state aid is larger than our slice of state aid to some extent, to a great extent. So they're much more reliant on the state's contribution to education, and we can certainly debate the wisdom of the state in sort of shorting the contributions to the schools. That's a debate that needs to happen, but we are looking very carefully, trying to read tea leaves coming out of the legislature, and to date there really have been none. About what kind of percentage cut Chapter 70 is going to experience. The Secretary of DESE has come out and said that schools will start again in the fall, but only 10 kids per class, everybody, with a bunch of restrictions. And quite honestly, I will be talking to the superintendent tomorrow, but I can't possibly imagine how that's even feasible, not only in our district, but in every district. So there are big challenges, but quite honestly, we're not going to have clear answers to those challenges, those questions, until we get probably into the new fiscal year. So as I say, we are fully we're cognizant of the fact that we're going to have to revisit this budget. We're expecting to revisit this budget. If we don't have to, it'll be wonderful. But we do know that we're going to have to revisit. But I think in terms, for Bridgewater, better to go into the fiscal year with a spending plan than to go in certainly with a 1/12 budget, which would not probably not be wise for us. So a very long answer to what was probably a pretty short question.
Who started that question anyway? Was that Bill?
No, but I'll ask another
Okay.
related question.
Right ahead.
So I understand that, the budget pinch that everybody's having in the fact that we don't have numbers out of the State House yet that we can rely upon. But my understanding with the recent actions the district took was it was more driven by a date than financial numbers, because you have to declare changes in employment by a certain date because of either the contracts or the something else that's going on. Is that true?
That is correct. Contractually, I believe most of the contracts, but certainly the pertinent contracts at the district require layoff notification. I believe ours, the district's is June 15th. So I've heard June 15th, July 15th, depending on the districts, but most educational contracts include those provisions. So the superintendent did have to make notification, and he did it the end of last week.
But I guess I think that notification went out with a number in it as a potential deficit shortfall, which hopefully the fact that we're going to potentially vote in the town, the council will vote and say, yes, we're going to give our 2.9% commitment still to the schools, will help with that. But it's still, the public still sees the town, the schools short money and teachers being impacted by it, bottom line.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I don't know. Anybody have other questions? Right now, we're just having a general discussion under item D on the fiscal 21 budget.
Yeah, this is Julie. I have a question. Can I speak?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if everyone's aware that the school, I know we mentioned that we're using some of the rainy day funds, but the school district is also using $1.5 million from their E&D and leaving just $300,000 in their E&D. That's their balance. So I appreciate the fact that the town's using theirs, but I just wanted people to be aware that the school district is always using theirs, is also using theirs. And Kathy, the June 15th date is accurate as far as when the notification's needed for the layoffs. And it's my understanding that it was non-tenured staff, teachers across the board, but it also was to offset like a 6.9, it was offset numbers in the sense of what they anticipate the revenue could go down, just like we did. Do you know what I mean? So will some get hired back? Possibly. Will they? Definitely. It will all depend on what the state does come back with. So I just wanted people to be aware that they are using their E&D funds as well, not just us. But, and then on the golf course thing that we talked about, this could come up later, but Mike Dolan at the earlier meeting asked for numbers for when was the last time they were solvent and how much have we supplemented. I was wondering if we could also add when was the last time they paid us back, because there was some discussion in your meeting about that is a possibility. So if there's any way for us to add that to the research that's going to be done, that would be helpful for me. Okay. That's all.
We're talking on the enterprise funds tonight too, right? Because Josh sent out the enterprise budgets. Is that on tonight's agenda?
Absolutely, yes. Yep.
All right.
The FY21 budget is everything. Is everything. And we have the orders in front of us if we're comfortable with with that, are there any questions from the joint committee about the budget? Revenues, expenses?
So I have another question, because I know it came up at the town council meeting, the last meeting, talking about, I'm not going to use the right term, but rescinding the meals tax potentially. And so what would that mean from a budgetary perspective?
So
Dennis,
the-
do you want me to answer that? So, Kathy, we actually inquired to the Department of Revenue, and we don't have in order for that to even be considered to take effect, and there are multiple other considerations, we would have had to file that May 31st. So we're not going to be able to move forward with that because of the timing. The earliest we could put that into effect is October 1st, which that was not the intent of what we were trying to do. So we're not going to move forward on that.
Okay, I'm actually glad to hear that, because I think it was just a small subset of the broader Bridgewater businesses and the schools and everybody else. So I'm glad to hear that.
But the impact to the budget in the revenue projections, there was, I think, $90,000 projected in meals tax for fiscal '21.
Yeah.
So if we could have done that for 3 months, the projection would have been like $7,500 a month projected we could have lost to that 90,000. So we would have had to have made that up, or perhaps at the end of the fiscal year, it would have made itself up. We don't know, but that would have been the impact. Had we been able to go forward, it would have been about $7,500 per month for the 3 months that was being proposed.
And Dennis, that was my point in writing it the way Matt and I did, was to say we'd already achieved our local revenue projection for the current fiscal year. I don't want to give away money we don't know we have in a certain sense, you know?
Right.
I knew we had that money. It can't be done according to the state, which is fine. You know, they set the rules, but that was why it was written that way to begin with.
Right. No, and it would have been nice if we could have done something. I'm not saying we can't revisit it down the road, but you know, all these restaurants also have been holding on to the local meals tax and the state meals tax as well. Nothing has been turned over to the town of Bridgewater. Correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony or Mike, since this whole thing started. Yeah.
Okay, I want to be clear on something. The 0.75% that's collected by anyone that sells food that's considered a food sales, okay? It can be a pizza, it can be a pasta dinner. That is like any other tax collected by a retail establishment. That is considered a liability to the state of Massachusetts. Because we adopted the meals tax local option, that 0.75, which was in addition to the state tax, then is collected by the state, and then they flow that money back to the city and town. So it actually is a 0.75% of the meal sales in the town of Bridgewater. Upwards to last year, without the COVID, we would have generated almost $400,000. That's not insignificant. So it's not the establishment's money to begin with. I spend money to buy a sub when I am in Bridgewater. That in fact is my 0.75 contribution to the town of Bridgewater for a tax to be used to provide local services. So it's really important to know that that's all that is a pass-through tax that's been established by the town of Bridgewater to be used to fund your operating budgets. We get paid quarterly. So the last check we received was not impacted by COVID. We received it at the beginning of March, and that was for the prior 3 months, February, January, December. We're going to receive our payment in late June, which will be for May, April, and March. So we will see the significance of COVID on the reduction of that revenue to the town. Any any operation during COVID has been required to file all their sales and use tax reports with the state of Massachusetts as they would have been required non-COVID. I know of no change in that law that allowed the establishments to defer payment to the state. I may be mistaken, but I know of no change to the law.
So we're still talking about the overall FY21 budget, enterprise funds included. If there's any questions from either committee members? Bill?
Thank you. I want to focus on the enterprise funds again. Because we just got the budget, at least for I just saw it. But so on the transfer station, and if I can direct this back to Tony a little bit. So I and most of my street pay for our trash pickup, but then we're also paying again to subsidize the trash that people drop off at the transfer station. So is that a cost issue that can be adjusted? We talked years ago about finding better price hauling or joining a community for trash or something like that. And what can we do for the revenue? Because it seems like year after year, we're doing a transfer into the transfer station to basically, pay for a very small staff, a great staff, by the way, but a small staff and not too much equipment. So in terms of enterprise funds, how are we going to solve that issue? And before you answer that, I'll just take another minute on the golf enterprise fund to answer maybe a couple questions, because I tracked revenue numbers daily for over 6 months one time because the golf course was constantly hitting the general fund, and we were doing small transfers. The primary reason was the senior debt on the golf course, the debt that paid for the land. There's also a debt obligation on the clubhouse. The debt that paid for the land was paid off in, I think it was 2018, first portion of that fiscal year. So that's gone. So that helps quite a bit. In 1 year, we actually talked back the expenses from 1.3 million to 1.2 million because the revenue structure just didn't satisfy that. So for the past couple years, I believe, and Tony, you can answer this one too, but I think we've structured it as a loan as opposed to just moving it from a year-end transfer over to the golf course. And the golf course has paid back until the most recent crisis. We were scheduled to get a payback of, I think it was, I don't remember what the number was, but we had structured it as a loan with the intention that the enterprise fund needed to pay for itself. And a few years ago, we also talked about the fact that once we built the admin code, and this was a key element in the admin code, we put the golf course under the rec department. And it doesn't have to stay as an enterprise fund. It can be dissolved as an enterprise fund, simply be an operational piece and fund back the rec department in that method. There are several other methods, but if it were solvent and if we could contain expenses and really generate some heavy duty revenue, we can back up our rec department big time with additional revenues that are coming off the golf course, either from the function hall, the outings, or just general golf. So maybe that helps answer some of the questions, and Tony can fill in that. But I want to just start with the transfer station, if we could. How are we looking at those numbers? And how are we going to? Seems like it's a structural deficit year after year, and how are we going to cure that?
So I'll take a crack at that, Bill. Transfer station is, from the outside seems like a very simple business. You go, you dump trash, you pay for what you dump, and then it goes somewhere. In reality, it's actually one of the more challenging, probably the most challenging business unit, although it's also the smallest we have. But it's one of the most challenging because of the fluctuation, the relative dramatic fluctuations in the price, the tipping fees, and the price of disposal, and also more importantly, the cost to dispose of recyclables. So what a few years ago we made money on, all of a sudden you don't make money on, you have to actually pay to dispose of. So on the expense side, certainly it's a very challenging world. On the revenue side, excuse me, we know that we've got a revenue shortfall there. We've been advertising the services of the transfer station. We've also increased our rates at the number of months ago, so that we should begin to see some increases in revenue to offset some of those necessary increases in expenses. So that's both. I think you hit on the two that are challenges for us on an ongoing basis: the golf course and the transfer station. So we're looking at ways. We run the transfer station as inexpensively as possible. I think everybody here knows that. But so we're not going to see substantial savings on the expense side. We could. And we need to look at better ways to increase revenue without sacrificing the volume that we get. So you can't, trash is a volume business. You can't do anything that will sacrifice the volume, because your revenues will fall. So we increase rates. When we increase rates, people fall off and their volume goes somewhere else. So it's a balancing act, and it's one of the more challenging balancing acts that we have. On the golf course side, you're right. The golf course was paying back, and we'll address that at a future meeting and give you all the numbers. But we have looked several years ago, probably about 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. We looked at trying to privatize the course. Obviously it's a town property. It's always going to be a town property, but you can, look at options to privatize the operation. And we did do that. At the time, we had several people come in and look at it. None were interested in taking over the operation. One said, hey, we've looked at all of this. We can't do anything better. We can't squeeze more revenue, nor can we squeeze, the expenses. So you guys are doing better, as well as we could if we took it over. So therefore, we're out. We have reinitiated, now that the debt is gone on the course itself, and the only remaining debt is for the actual clubhouse. We're looking at different options again. And it may or may not be a worthy discussion for us to continue looking at the possibility that we privatize. So, the objective of the golf course when it was first built was to make sure that the property was used and not developed into hundreds of houses. And so there, as far as we can tell, there is a conservation or a building restriction on that property. So effectively, we're not going to sell the golf course. I mean, nobody wants to buy a golf course in this environment, quite honestly. But there are ways that we can, begin to address how it's run, and certainly part of that discussion can and should include whether or not we eliminate the enterprise fund or not. The enterprise fund, just my opinion, the enterprise fund does provide some insulation, so that it's sort of the general fund isn't absorbing all the risk associated with the golf course, and there is some risk anytime you run a business operation. So, but that's certainly something to look at.
Yeah, I think the transfer station is it's a service that's being provided. If you don't use it, that's a prerogative. But the golf course, with the debt gone, at least on the main $5 million borrowed back in 1997, this is, I think, the first full fiscal year without that debt. And if we have a deficit and the debt wasn't even part of it, it would have been a lot worse if we had another payment to make on that. So I'm hoping, again, they got off to a bad start simply because of what happened in March, and hopefully that a normal golf season without that $400,000 debt will help them. Mike, I have one question on the transfer station. Can you explain the transfer station attendance? The salary line item was dropped $9,000. What was the purpose of that? What is the purpose of that? Was it overfunded or?
Yes.
It was overfunded. Okay.
Yep.
It's not a cut in pay or anything. No.
No.
It is.
No.
Hey, Michael, just a quick question in relation to Dennis's last comment. I thought for some reason, and I could be wrong, and we don't have to answer it here, but maybe if we could look into it. I thought last year was the first year of the bond being fully paid off, and the golf course had actually made a surplus last year. I don't know why I think that, but I do, or maybe I'm mistaken.
No, Eric, I think you're correct. We budgeted, and the golf course did return some of the money that had been extended to it over the past 3 years. So, and honestly, just, not to pile on the golf course, but but for the COVID impacts, we would not be looking, obviously, Tony and I would not be looking at a transfer at this point. So the vast majority of that transfer is necessitated because we've had a disruption in the operation of that course. So I don't want you to think that at this point, I mean, it's always a challenging business, but at this point, I don't want you to think that it's that the business operations themselves are in bad shape.
Michael, did you say earlier how much you thought the COVID payments might cover that $250?
Tony actually has a better idea.
Yeah, it actually is not going to cover the $250. But for the COVID, we would have more like a $400,000 deficit. So we're going to get reimbursed for $150,000.
Okay, so the number is already in there for what we expect to receive from COVID aid.
Correct.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Dennis.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question on the transfer station. Michael, I understand completely that the price point on the transfer station is very important to drive business. And so we have an up and down in what we have to pay for the business that goes there. And we can't magically change the price point, nor do we want to change the price point based on the up and down of what we have to pay to get rid of it. So the only other lever I can see to pull, and I'd ask you guys to look at it, you don't have to answer it tonight, is hours and what are we paying to actually keep it open. Someone can go and pay the amount they want for a lesser period of time when the costs of actually shipping it out are more, and then when it's less, then we can use that quote unquote excess money to keep it open longer. Just a thought. Don't expect any answer.
Oh, that's those are the kinds, those are exactly the kinds of scenarios that that we talk about all the time, not only related to the transfer station, but the golf course and any other operation townwide. But thanks, that's a good thing to look at.
And Michael, you and I a couple times have talked about whether to get rid of the sticker and increase it per bag. So maybe the cost per person doesn't shift, it doesn't change. It's basically a closed membership right now. You can't get in there without a sticker, or you shouldn't be able to get in there without a sticker. I know it happens. But if you got rid of the sticker and based it on a slightly increased per bag, then maybe more people would use it as well. And, maybe even not only just people local to the transfer station.
No, very good point. And that's when I say we've tried to market that facility. That's exactly what we've been trying to do. DEP does have some rules regarding how costs are split up, but that's certainly part of the overall conversation and how we can make it a better operation.
We're still discussing the overall FY21 budget, everything, transfer station, Does anybody have any other questions? I don't know if we want to open it up for public comment, or do we feel comfortable voting tonight, or should we have another meeting a week from tonight? Unless there's more questions.
I'll approve the budget as it is. I don't think we're going to learn more in 7 days than we have right now.
I'll second it.
What did you do, Tim?
I made a motion to approve it as submitted by the town manager. I don't believe we're going to learn anything more in 7 days that substantially changes our mind.
And Eric, on the finance committee, I'll do the same. I'll make a motion to approve. I don't think we'll learn anything next
So
week.
we have to vote each order separately, I believe. So
Okay.
why don't we open it up for the public? You want to open it up to the public? I want to open it up to the public, and then we'll go back and go down the orders. There might be some members of the public on. I do see names on here. I don't see too many.
Time when Bill can ask his question from earlier too, then?
Bill? He's been asking his questions.
Yeah, no, I actually covered it all, Tim. Thanks.
Is there anybody out in the public that wants to comment on the budget or the finance? I mean, Eric, does your committee have more questions for the town manager or Tony?
I'll open it up to the rest of the team. I do not, Dennis, thank you. And I'll open it up.
This is Susie. I have a couple questions. I was just curious, as some of the preliminary work is underway for the master plan, what elements of the master plan work are part of this 2021 budget? So that's just an overarching question. And then probably more so just from a comment standpoint, I'd love for the financial committee to probably just take as an agenda item for an upcoming meeting to discuss master plan. I'd just love to get some more background and sort of our role as a committee with that work. I think it's really exciting and I'm interested in it. And then what was my other question? Sorry, I think those are the ones I can remember for now.
So I'll take it. That's actually a great question. And very often at the council level, a number of councilors have reiterated the point that the budget is essentially the town's sort of planning statement. It sets a direction that the town should be going in. I don't disagree with that. I think this year, really our challenge is to just maintain, So there are no new initiatives built into the budget. Given the obvious revenue constraints that we're looking at, and as well as the fact that the master plan process is not finished, so that won't be finished till mid fiscal year 21. So once that is completed, gone through the cycle, and gets adopted by the planning board and endorsed by the council, that then becomes the policy statement, and from that we can begin to look at how we fund the initiatives or the action points that are contained within the master plan. So that's how it should work. As I say, this year and very possibly FY22, we're going to see such severe revenue constraints that really all we're going to be doing is just making every attempt to tread water and not move backwards. So that's essentially what, what the new sort of objectives are. And certainly the master planning process and the committee is they're in a difficult place because obviously all of this is going on around them. But they've got to look forward, 5 years, 10 years, and make some decisions about where the town should be in 5 and 10 years, and not get caught up in what we have to get caught up in, and that is the immediacy of the revenue shortfall. So the finances, the budget as a policy statement is absolutely what it should be. It should reflect the pieces of the master plan that we're going to begin to implement next year, the year after. But we're probably 1 year early in really tying the budget to implementation of the master plan. So I don't know if that answers your question, Susie.
Yeah, that's helpful context for sure. Thank you. Oh, I do actually remember my other question, and it actually is for you, Michael. On the when the council was meeting on the Facebook Live the other day, I think you had mentioned that there is a marketing consultant that had been engaged and sort of on hold right now, of course, because of other priorities. Did I hear that correctly? And then I was just curious what that resource was for.
That was, yes, we engaged a company called Buxton, and Buxton's specialty or their expertise is to develop local business and provide us with a whole host, hundreds of thousands of data points that we can use as recruitment tools for new businesses, whether they're retail businesses, commercial businesses, manufacturing businesses, and so forth. So we have signed a 3-year contract. We've been on hold for the last couple months, obviously, as everybody has been. But I know Jennifer Burke is picking up the conversations now again with Buxton, so that we can be much more aggressive about the recruitment efforts to Bridgewater. So that's what that is.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions before we vote?
So, Eric, I guess is your board comfortable voting on these budget orders tonight? I think we are. So,
Dennis, are you going to hear from the public?
Yes. So I will open it up to the public. If any of the public has any questions regarding the budget or anything we discussed tonight. Any public comment? Any public comment at all? I can't see hands. I see mute buttons. Again, the council will have a public hearing on the budget on June 23rd, in which time the entire council will vote the budget, provided the recommendations come in from the Finance Committee. So seeing no discussion, I think Eric, we're comfortable voting tonight. Is your committee comfortable voting tonight?
Yeah, I'm just going to ask the question. Obviously, I think Bill and I are. Susie, Kathy, Julie, any concern? Leah, any concerns on voting tonight?
I'm ready.
No concerns for me.
Great. I think we're good, Dennis.
Okay, so why don't we do one at a time? We'll do order 1, and then you guys can do order 1, and we'll do order 2, and you do order 2. Is that fine?
Yep.
Okay, so Tim, I'll entertain a motion to approve order FY21-001, the annual town budget.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Sean. Any discussion?
John, we can flip-flop the motions in the seconds.
Okay.
Yeah. It's going to screw up my minutes taking.
That's why
You gotta earn the money you get paid to host this committee. So let's do this.
Copy. You're throwing off my copy and paste. Anyway, Okay, Tim,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Dennis, yes, 3-0. Okay, Eric?
Okay.
Very
Bill,
cool.
I'll entertain your motion. Yep, your motion.
I'll
to
make a
approve
motion to approve the general budget. I don't have the order number in front of me.
FY 20001,
By 21.
2021. Yep, sorry. FY 21001. Do I have a second?
Leah Wyatt, I'll second.
Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Leah,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Susie.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you, Dennis?
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve order FY 21002, budget order FY 21 water enterprise fund budget.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Sean, second by Tim. Any discussion? Sean,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Dennis, yes, 3-0.
Great. And I will look for a motion to approve FY 21002, the Water Enterprise Fund. Do I have a motion?
Motion, Julie.
Do I have a second?
Second, Bill.
Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Susie.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, acting under order FY 21003, budget order FY 21 sewer enterprise fund budget. Entertain a motion to approve.
Moved.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Sean. Any discussion? Tim,
Aye.
Sean,
Yes.
Dennis, yes, 3-0. Motion passes.
I'll entertain a motion to approve FY 21003, the Sewer Enterprise Fund. Do I have a motion?
Motion, Leah Wyatt.
Do I have a second?
Second, Bill.
That's the second by Bill, Josh.
Sorry, what was that?
That was a second by Bill, I believe.
Yep, okay, and I'll do the roll call vote. Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Yes.
Julie,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Bill,
Yes.
Susie.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we're acting under order FY 21004, budget order FY 21 transfer station enterprise fund. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Sean, seconded by Tim. Any discussion? Sean,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Dennis, yes, 3-0. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to approve FY 21004, the Transfer Station Enterprise Fund.
Kathy, motion.
Second?
Second, Julie.
Okay, Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Yes.
Julie,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Susie.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we're acting under order FY 21005, budget order FY 21, the Old Scotland Links Golf Course Enterprise Fund budget. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Sean. Any discussion? Tim,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Dennis, yes. It's passed 3-0.
I'll entertain a motion to approve FY 21005, the Old Scotland Golf Course Links Enterprise Fund. So I have a motion.
Motion, Leah Wyatt.
Second. Do I have a second?
Second, Kathy.
Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Yes.
Julie,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Susie.
Aye. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Acting under order FY 21006, authorizing of revolving funds. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Sean, seconded by Tim. Any discussion? Seeing none. Sean,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
and Dennis, yes, 3-0. Thank you.
FY 21006, alternating revolving funds. Any discussion on that? The motion?
Julie.
Motion. Leah Wyatt.
Do I have a second?
Second, Kathy.
Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Bill. Bill,
Aye.
Susie,
Aye.
thank you.
Okay, acting under order FY 21007, CPA reserve accounts for fiscal 21. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second. Sorry, Sean.
Motion by Sean, second by Tim. Any discussion? Sean,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Dennis, yes, 3-0.
And a motion to approve FY 21007 CPA reserve accounts.
Motion. Leah Wyatt.
Second?
Second, Bill.
Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Susie,
Aye.
thank you.
Okay, so that takes care of all of our budget orders for fiscal 21. We've already had discussions. We've had public comment, but I'll open it up one more time for public comment now that we already took our votes. I don't think there's a need for another joint meeting. Do you think we're all set with the budget, or?
Dennis, could I just bring something up real quick?
Sure.
I sent you something that I'd like to put on to the next town council agenda around, you've seen it. I just want to make sure you saw it, and hopefully it gets on there. Thanks.
Yes, it'll be on there. I think I'm gonna co-sponsor it, actually. Anyway, so there's no need for another joint meeting at this time. The budget's been reviewed, presented, reviewed, and approved until the state chimes in. We'll be back.
Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Tim, seconded by Sean. All those, Tim,
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Okay, we are now, Budget and Finance Committee's adjourned at 8:10 PM. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn the FinCom meeting?
Eric, before we do that, do we we want to discuss when our next meeting will be, or someone will be in touch?
No, that's fine. That's a good call out. Kathy, when are your next George Mitchell meetings scheduled?
There's one on the 15th, and then, help me out, Josh, do you have it on the tip of your thing, or should I grab my calendar?
The 15th and the 29th.
Okay, the 15th and the 29th.
And the next, I believe we just said the next council meeting, so I would assume there's no new business that's going to come up between now and the 23rd. So my suggestion would be we wait until at least until the 29th would be that Monday, right? If I have my dates right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the following Monday, just correct me if I'm right, is July 4th week?
No. So July 4th is before, it'd be July 6th is the following Monday.
So it'll be July 4th week, sorry. I know that's a tough week. Can everybody do Tuesdays still? Maybe we'll just meet the 30th. the
It's my
Tuesday.
birthday. But we can have a birthday party, by Zoom party, drive-by. I don't know, I don't have any plans, but it is my birthday.
Just-
Kitchen to my husband in the other room. No.
We'll have virtual cupcakes.
So why don't we shoot for the 30th and we can sing happy birthday, and then we can firm up the rest of the summer. I believe the council only meets once in July and once in August as well, so we can set our meetings for the rest of the summer at that time. Does that make sense?
What time would you guys like to do it at?
I think 6:30 again.
Okay.
Great. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Julie.
Second?
Second, Kathy. Oh, sorry, Leah.
It's all right.
Eric,
Aye.
Kathy,
Yes.
Julie,
Aye.
Leah,
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Susie.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a good night.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks,
Have a good night, everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.